Hey everybody, it's your Sam and I'm here with another video. Today I want to talk a little bit about how do you know what to include in a series or your book. And I'm going to use Mists and my upcoming epic kind of as an example as to why I'm talking about this, because it's something very near and dear to my heart and something important. And something that a lot of us writers who have a large time span to cover struggle with. You know, your historical romance or historical fantasy or those type of writers, those type of authors, they have a lot of time frame to kind of cover. So what do you put into your epic? What do you put into a story like Mists? As some of you know, and I've talked a little bit about it on my channel, especially when talking about Mists and the epic that I'm going to write, I'm writing it based on Cain and Abel, the story of Adam and Eve. It's biblical. I'm taking a lot of liberties though, and it's not all set in stone, and it's very much my work. That being said, the first humans, or what could be considered ancestors of humans, have dated back 5 million years, 2 million years. Am I going to start way back then? Hell no. So one, I don't have time to research that much and dig that much into our history and into some things that are still difficult to find research-wise as a civilian, as a non-scientist type person. That being said, Cain and Abel were said to have occurred around 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. That's still a lot of time span there. Am I going to start there? No. Now, this doesn't say that I might write a side story, kind of like Mist, that can date back to that time. I don't know what I will feel like writing in the future, but more than likely, no. The firstborn of Cain that has survived up until current times in my epic or in Mist, his name is Andy. And he was born in the year 34 BCE. That's well over 2,000 years ago. Yeah, am I going to start back then? No. Am I going to have some flashbacks to back then? Probably. I've done enough research to, I feel. I hope. So what am I going to include? How do I draw the line? First of all, I am very much still a plantser or gardener. I plot out as best as I can, as minimally as I can, so I will still have the drive to write the story, but yet I have a guideline to follow, and if I go off the beaten path, I have a way to come back and keep in line. But that goes to show that I need to figure out what to include. Like I said, I'm not going to go back all the way to 34 BCE. It's a long time ago. Still a lot of research, which I've done a good portion of it. By all means, I am no expert. Nowhere near expert level. But do I include flashbacks to when Andy was, say, 30 years old? Maybe, if it becomes important to the story. Right now, the way I have my story, Mists, for example, what has been written in it, Andy is not a main character in Mists. He's a side character, but he's going to be a main character in the epic. So he's kind of added in on this. He's talked about, he makes some cameos, but I don't need his whole history. Ansgar, on the other hand, is a main character in Mist. And Ansgar was born in 370 AD. Did I include that exact date when writing Mist? No. I even have to look down at my notes that I've had for 15 years here to make sure that I was getting the date right, because there are 12 siblings to remember. Am I going to include any of his backstory or flashbacks or anything like that? No. I have alluded to one of the toughest and terror-ridden and trauma-inducing moments in his life, but I haven't went into detail because that detail is going to be in his book, and that book is going to be book number 3 in the epic series. Now, why am I not including it in Mists? One, it's not really important to the story. Mists, as a story, is all about them getting ready to become a part of society, being able to work cell phones, being able to socialize normally, being able to fit in with their clothing and actions and speech. Also, it's about fighting the monster of the week, because there's been a monster of the week in Mists that they have had to overcome. But Ansgar's reactions are partly because of some of his trauma, some of his history. That's the reason why I've alluded to that moment in time that was where he was at his weakest. Because his reactions, his thoughts, a lot of times go back into that, and I have to show that trauma. But I'm not going to add that story into Mists. I want Mists to be a hint into Ansgar's book in the epic. And I think I've done a pretty good job so far. I hope that it's enticed people enough to want to read the epic whenever I do manage to write it and get it out there. Now, about the epic and what I'm going to include, I've got to decide a point in time to start that epic. And it's going to be Andib as the main character, but there's another main character too. And it's when those two meet. That's when the timeline starts. There's going to be a lot of flashbacks. It's an epic. There's a lot of pages to fill. Whatever is important to the story, that's what you include in your book. Whatever pushes the plot forward, whatever explains your characters' mechanisms and thought processes and feelings and emotions that they go through while you are telling your story and getting your story out to your reader, that's what you include in your story. It's got to be relevant. Have you started your story at the right point? Have you included enough of the history in your story to flesh it out, make the reader feel for your characters and for that era, so to speak? There'll be more on this probably a little later. Probably a lot more on this a little later. And sooner or later, you're going to hear me bemoan the writing of the epic and plotting of the epic. Plotting comes first. And yeah, that's going to be a ton of fun. So look forward to that. Thank you for watching this short little thing about Mists and the timeline that I had to go through and pick and choose the point to start. I hope this helps some of you out there to think a little bit better about your writing, how you started, and how well it's doing, and how good you're being at including the right things into your story. And maybe that one little nagging thing, maybe it's made you think about it a little bit more and have an aha moment. Maybe you're not starting at the right point. Maybe you need to start a week later, or 500 years later. Thank you for watching. Be kind to one another out there. Be kind to yourself. Stay creative and keep writing. And I will see you next time.